You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to today's episode of Locked On Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. My name is Nick Bondy. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick Bondy. I'm joined as always by my brilliant co-host, Lachlan Irvin. You can find him on Twitter at Lock in the Crease and his writing at Canucks Army. Lachlan, we can put the pitch of forks away for just a brief moment. The Vancouver Canucks won in regulation. They got to 2 points. We can just ease it back maybe a bit for now.
Yeah, a little bit, can't we? Especially you get to take in the joy of watching, it's Patrick Kane's 1000th NHL game. Or the ceremony.
I was going to vomit
anyway,
watching that ceremony.
I did not pay one lick of attention during that. And you know what? That's not to just, obviously Patrick Kane's a very talented hockey player. There are a lot of reasons why we shouldn't necessarily be celebrating anything the Chicago Blackhawks do right now. Especially when it ties into the 2010 era team.
I tweeted this out after the win last night by the Canucks. The Chicago Blackhawks will not win a game until Stan Bowman stands trial at The Hague.
I would, I'd love to believe that that's the karmic realignment that would happen. That would be required. Of course, life is not that easy, and I'm sure an Arizona Coyotes team will give them a win at some point. But for one night only, it was very nice watching watching the Canucks win a game, and maybe not as convincingly as you would like, but at the very least, you see there was the tweet, I believe, from Mark Lazarus, a very good Hawks beat reporter. Video. He took video of the end of the game and how the fans at the United Center were booing the Blackhawks off the ice for the second straight game.
Delicious. I love it. I love to see it.
Yeah. Oh, that makes your weekend. That makes your weekend. That's the kind of we did something good. We did a good thing this today. So yeah, the Hawks are the Canucks are coming off a win. Finally, a regulation win. Even more importantly, they did not give up a single point. And again, they didn't look like the best they possibly could, but they still took care of business.
Yeah, so we're going to get into last night's win versus the Chicago Blackhawks, a 4-1 win. We'll talk about Thatcher Demko because he's had a very strong start to the season. And we'll preview Saturday night's game, the Canucks versus the Seattle Kraken, the first. And what are we calling it? We talked about this on a previous episode. I called it the Cascadia conflict.
Yeah, I believe that's what you called it, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think that's probably about where it's going to be. I think it's going to be Cascadia something, or something of Cascadia.
I see a lot of people online saying it should be Squid Game. But here's the problem, okay?
Squid Game.
You would think that's a good title, okay? But you want something that's going to last the test of time. You want something that's going to last the test of time. It's a hot show now. It's a hot show now, but what about in a year? It's remember when everyone was obsessed about Tiger King when we couldn't go out of our house?
Right.
Who's talking about it? No one. So you want something that stands the test of time.
Locked On Joe Exotic coming to you next week.
There's going to be so many Joe Exotic costumes this Halloween that we can actually go out and party.
Know what? I don't think there will be. I think that again. I think you're right in the sense of that ship totally sailed, and last Halloween was the time to do it. If you haven't, it's too late. The only thing from last year, the only I guess things that people thought were going to be fads that have still hung around are Among Us, the game Among Us, and that's about it from the pandemic times. I think that's about where it's going to be. None of this, don't give me any of this highway whatever stuff for the Kraken Canuck rivalry. I'm not a fan of ever when people
I-5 or whatever it's called.
The I-5, the battle of the I-5 or something.
Lame.
That's boring. That's boring. No one knows that. Okay. No one's going to know. No, people will know it's a road and that's it. That's not interesting. You got to give it some oomph. This is the Pacific.
Transportation infrastructure isn't like a good name for a rivalry.
It's not sexy. It's not a
Yeah.
sexy topic. You got to go for something that gets a little spice in there. Like the Battle of Alberta, the Battle of Ontario. I think Battle of Cascadia works perfectly. Like that sort of thing works very well. Yeah. But we'll see we'll see what people decide. It's got to come out naturally, obviously. As far as the Canucks, it's interesting that they're going to be going from, the Canucks are going from arguably their biggest rival of the last however decade or so, like maybe not necessarily in recent years, but definitely a rivalry between Vancouver and Chicago that had more heat than arguably any other rivalry in Canucks history, going to one that will probably turn into that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue. So last night, the Chicago Blackhawks lost to the Vancouver Canucks 4-1. We mentioned it right off the top just a few minutes ago. We could put away the pitchforks for now. They did win. They did what they were supposed to do. Win in regulation, like you mentioned. But I think there's still a few things we can glean from this game and maybe a few concerns. First of all, they won the game, which is most important. First, the old Al Davis just win, baby. Like that's kind of where the Canucks were at last night. Just they got the win. They scored a goal on the power play. The power play actually got the job done. Brock Besser at the side net with a great pass from Elias Pettersson. Jason Dickinson opened the scoring for the Vancouver Canucks. And there's a few things that I think the team did well. We just mentioned the power play, got on the board, and they look like their dominant selves like we saw in that 1920 season. There was flashes of a few players, I think, dominating at 5-on-5, but there's still some concerns. The penalty kill, still a concern. The Blackhawks' lone goal came on the penalty kill. There were still way too easy setups for the opposition on the penalty kill. I think, guys like Elias Pettersson and Brock Besser have not looked themselves at 5-on-5. Again, they combined for that power play goal, but they don't look like themselves at 5-on-5. And immediately after the Jason Dickinson 1-0 goal, they concede a penalty, which leads to the tying goal. Now, obviously, they got it back on track later in the game. Tanner Pearson with a tip in front. So all in all, Lachlan, they got the win. They got the 2 points in regulation, first regulation win of the season. But there's still things I think this team needs to clean up.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I'm not, I think you and I are both under the idea that, it's not, there's no reason to panic with players like Pettersson, I wouldn't throw Besser necessarily in that because this was only his second game of the season and he got a goal. Yeah. So he's had a good, as far as he's concerned, he's had a very good start.
I guess I should rephrase it. The Lotto line in general at 5-on-5.
The Lotto line looked rough. They got hemmed in their own zone by a clearly inferior Chicago team far too often. Like they were getting, like the Hawks were running circles around them on numerous occasions in that game. And I'm not entirely sure what to make of it because obviously there are 2 years worth of, there's 1 year where Pettersson was incredible right out of the gate, had an amazing hot start.
Yeah, 8 goals in 8 games.
Yeah, one of the few times the Canucks have had a rookie go on that kind of a tear to start their career. Like obviously the Sedins took a while. Like you look back
Sedins
on the
took
team's
years.
history.
It wasn't until after the lockout they became the Sedins that we know and love.
I would, if I could, I would get into my hottest take in Canucks history about the Sedins, but
say it. You can't tease me like that and not say it.
Okay. I'll put it very quickly. And this is, I maintain that what made Roberto Luongo so important to the Canucks is that he freed up the Sedins to be as good as they could be. Because I think coaches were always scared to let the Sedins freewheel at the level they actually were capable of because they never had quality goaltending. And but then once they got Luongo there, suddenly coaches weren't afraid to be like, okay, Sedins, do your Sedinery magic, go and have fun with it, right? Because they knew the puck, if there was ever a rare gaff, that Luongo was going to shut it down at the other end. Either way, like I think Pavel Bure's maybe the closest, and even he took like a couple games or so. It took him some time. And then with Pettersson, he has the first good year. The last 3 seasons for him have all been kind of slow starts. Like, they weren't bad by any stretch. Well, maybe last year you could say it was a bit bad. Like, he had a bit of a bad start to the year. This year he's not been terrible. He hasn't been bad necessarily. He just hasn't been as good as you'd like, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much a case of just a guy who's not playing at the level he's fully capable of. And I don't know how to fix that. That's kind of the problem is with a guy like Pettersson, is just the fact that you're pretty darn sure he's going to figure it out at some point, but you don't really know how he's going to do so.
Yeah, and I think that's the concern for me is this just a bit of a cold streak, which happens to all great players? And the old saying in hockey, all great goal scorers are streaky, right? Is this just a natural cold streak that Elias Pettersson is going through, or is this systematic of something bigger that we need to be concerned about? And that's not the only talking point from this game. Kyle Burroughs. Kyle, has he cemented himself as a fan favorite here in Vancouver? A handful of games into his NHL career, because first of all, he's looked solid on that third pairing with Jack Rathbone. I think he's cemented himself as, a regular on that third pairing beside Jack Rathbone. We talked about it on the previous episode. It's because he knows his role. Let Jack Rathbone cook, let him do his thing, let him walk a line, let him take some bombs from the point, and you stay back and you be maybe a bit more conservative. Maybe you don't pinch a couple times a game. Play that more conservative and stay back and cover for someone like Jack Rathbone, because he has the skills to do something with the puck. But it's not only that. It's the fact that he stood up for Niels Höglander, which was a bit of a dangerous hit that he took, that dangerous area, just a couple, a foot from the boards, gets slammed into the boards. And he stood up for Niels Höglander. And look, I don't mind fights when it's like that, when it's standing up for a teammate in the heat of the moment.
Well, it's a heat of the moment thing. Yeah. It's like in baseball.
Yes.
It's like in baseball in the sense of like, you like the bench clear. Like, if they clear the benches organically, that's one thing.
But in baseball, they don't actually fight. They just kind of push each other and kick dirt. And it's not an actual fight in baseball. They just do it because, they have to stand up for a team. They don't actually fights in baseball. In hockey, I don't mind those heat of the moment fights. The fights I don't like are the stage fights, like off a face-off or something like that. And, everyone clears and it's like, oh, we're going to fight at center ice and we're really going to milk this. Those are the fights I don't like. But I like what Kyle Burroughs did.
Yeah, he stood up for a teammate, and that definitely endeared him to the fans and to the, a crowd. The Canucks haven't necessarily had a lot of frankly, they don't have any fighters on this team. Like, there's not really an enforcer type. I wouldn't even throw Kyle Burroughs into that conversation because that's not clearly not his style, generally speaking. He was just standing up for a teammate. Again, heat of the moment thing, that's different. This is a group mostly made up of guys who are not going to drop the gloves unless it's absolutely necessary, or they feel it's absolutely necessary. And that's good. You don't want to be wasting a roster spot on a guy who's just there to try and get into fights and try to, and spends half his time in the box. And Burroughs found in this game that he was not just, capable of, sticking up for his teammate. Like, that was just part of it. The best part of him was the fact that he was looking solid and playing a good defensive game throughout the night. He clearly isn't a liability. He should stay in the lineup for the foreseeable future with this team, because I don't think there's any. I think he is clearly, as far as like the bottom six, like the fringe defensemen go, he is clearly the best one.
Yeah, I think he's earned his spot on that third pairing for the foreseeable future. Still a lot of shots given up by the Vancouver Canucks in this game. They were outshot, by a significant margin, or definitely just outshot in general. I think that's still something to be concerned about, is teams like Chicago and Buffalo racking up the shots against you. And it is not like anything new. Like, we all knew the defense was going to be potentially an Achilles heel for this team in the regular season, but you still need to do your best to try and, at least, if you're going to get outshot, don't get outshot as badly as you were, especially in a game in Buffalo, but in Chicago as well. And that still is concerning to me, is the amount of quality chances the Canucks gave up. And this could have been a much closer game. Let's not forget, this could have been a much closer game.
Against a better team, they don't win. Against a better team, they probably don't win. That's a very real possibility. They don't win against, if this was
a Colorado instead of Chicago. But I think in general, there's things that you got the win at the end of the day, but there are still things to improve on, especially on the defensive side.
Right. It's, they don't ask how, they just ask how many in terms of when it comes down to points in the standings. Like there's no points added for equality of competition. Like that's not
You can
how
only
it
play
works.
who's on your schedule.
Right. And in the long term, in the long run, that is going to be a thing that needs to be addressed, is the fact that, yeah, they won this game, but that's simply because they're clearly the better team on paper. That's not because they actually played better than Chicago. It was very much a mix. They were very clearly outplayed, out hustled, I guess is the best way of putting it. They were out hustled at many points in that game. And a lot of the reason they came out of that win is that, and how they've come out with the wins they have so far, is Thatcher Demko.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Thatcher Demko in just a moment. But first, a word from our sponsor, Built Bar. Did you know that Built Bar has so many delicious flavors? There's something truly for everyone. When you talk to a Built Bar fan, they're definitely passionate about their favorite flavors. They have flavors like coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry. I'm more of a classic flavor guy. I like the strawberry, the orange, the cookies and cream. And if you haven't tried all the flavors, don't worry. You can get a mix box where you'll get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. Not only are Built Bar flavors the best tasting, but they're healthy too. They only have 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories ranging from 130 to 180, and only 4 to 5 grams of sugar. So go to built.com and use the promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Okay, so Thatcher Demko so far this season, is he the team MVP? I don't know. It's too early to talk about.
Yes,
I think
yes,
team
he
MVP.
is. He is 100%.
Yeah, I know. As a
the
goalie
team.
guy, you would say Thatcher Demko's a team MVP. But this was the game plan heading into the season, right? We knew the defense was going to be, suspect. We knew that. So we knew we needed a big performance all season from the likes of Thatcher Demko to prop up that defense, and he did it last night. Again, the Chicago Blackhawks could have had 2-3 goals in this game if not for Thatcher Demko. Like they had their chances, but Demko held the door.
Yep. All three games that they have points in so far, like I said before the break, are on. They owe all of them to Thatcher Demko. Like he stole them points against a lot of teams. Like Edmonton, they got a point against Edmonton because he only allowed 2 goals against one of the best teams, scoring teams in the National Hockey League. They won against Philadelphia because he held them in for long stretches of that game and into a shootout. They won tonight, and they won this last game because of how well he played. And this is, again, I think Thatcher Demko is very clearly, like right now, if there was an early MVP award to be handed out, he would be it. Because there have been a lot of games where either the defense has kind of taken the night off, or like parts of it, at least players have taken the night off and it's not looked good. And Thatcher Demko has held the door shut. And he has been looking very, very good, to the point where, like, if you actually go and look at his stats, this is not just from like eye test stuff, even like either, right? If you, I did an article for Canucks Army, talking about kind of like stuff that I've noticed from the first 5 games of the year. And if you go to NHL stats right now, Thatcher Demko is tied for the most shots against in the NHL with the Islanders' Ilya Sorokin.
The Islanders, really? That's surprising.
That is, which, again, it's a surprising case of, the Islanders have given up a lot of shots. And in that time, so in the exact same number of games, so it's a clean slate for both of them. It's a clean spot for both of them. In that time, Sorokin has a save percentage of about, I think, hovering around 902, if I remember correctly. Like, so not great, like very much a right about where you'd expect for a goaltender who's faced the most shots in the league, but still not like great. Thatcher Demko is sporting a 922, which is insane considering again, he's faced the most shots in the NHL.
Is that all situations or is that even strength?
That was all. I believe that's all situations. That's just a full across the board. It is insane. At one point, he was behind. Oh, like before yesterday's game, he was behind Andrei Vasilevsky, who and Vasilevsky has a sub 900 save percentage.
I know.
So
I have him on my fantasy team, and I took him high.
Whoops.
Good
luck the rest of the way for you, my friend.
Hopefully, he turns it around.
Yeah, I mean, he's Andrei Vasilevsky. He'll find his game again for sure. But yeah, Thatcher Demko has played and punched far above his weight to win some points for this team. Again, I think that by the end of this season, I really do think that people are going to look at him as one of the premier goaltenders in the National Hockey League. I think he's going to be in the conversation with the Vasilevskys, with the Hellebucks, with those guys, with those goaltenders. I think he'll very much be in that group at the end of the year. It's only the question really becomes down the line is going to be, do they trust Yaroslav Halak to be able to give Demko enough rest? Can they rely on Halak to come and play a full 15, 20 games, probably more, to keep their number one guy rested enough to keep those results coming?
Yeah, and that is a good point because obviously the Vancouver Canucks, they need Thatcher Demko for the most part to prop up that defense. And I'm looking at their schedule right now. Obviously, they're playing tomorrow against Seattle. But after that, there's not really that many back-to-backs. I think the next back-to-back is the 13th and 14th between the Golden Knights and the Ducks. So, I mean, it's going out of style in the NHL, right? Like these workhorse NHL goalies, right? You know, back when Luongo was first series, I think he started like 70-something games. And, you know, all these guys starting 70s, you don't see that anymore. You see much more of a goalie tandem. But, you know, so there's a situation where obviously the next logical start for Herlack is, you know, the 13th or the 14th against either Golden Knights or Ducks. And you could for the Canucks, you're tempted to just play Thatcher Demko in all these games, but you'd obviously between now and those back-to-backs, you want to give him at least a bit of a break.
Oh yeah, they're going to be very tempted to play him in all of those games, and I am going to encourage them not to do that.
Listen to Lachlan.
Yeah, because and here's the thing. Like again, the part of the logic that's lost a lot of the time is the idea that people look at the second game in the back-to-back as a bona fide loss. They look at it as like this, it's a throwaway game. As long as we win the first one, who cares? Which they shouldn't do. And number two, like you mentioned, it's not only just the fact that playing a goalie 70+ games is going out of style. It's the fact that straight up, you should not do it anymore. You should not play a goaltender that much. The example I always bring up with people whenever I talk about goaltending workload is back in, I think it was 2016-17, Cam Talbot was the number one goalie for the Oilers. And I believe they started him in 72 games, something like that. And he had a great year. He was awesome. He was awesome the whole way through into the playoffs. They made it to the second round against Anaheim, lost in game 7, whatever. By the time they came back, he was so cooked. He was so burnt out that he got off to a terrible start the next year and it took him years to recover confidence-wise and putting that energy back into it. Like, it takes so much out of you. And again, a lot of goaltending is about your confidence and how you're feeling in the net. Once you start to lose that, it really can take a huge slide and completely cave your stats. I think Martin Jones is another guy who really suffered from that. He got overplayed by the Sharks for quite a while, and then very quickly he started to get worse and worse, and it started to go downhill for him because the confidence started to dip from playing a lot more bad games. And I don't want that. I don't want that to happen to Thatcher Demko. He's going to be a very good goaltender if you give him his rest, if you make sure you have a more than capable guy to back him up who can play. Honestly, like in my opinion, like you almost got to look at it a little bit like a pitching starting rotation almost, where maybe you're not playing them 50-50. You're not splitting them a straight up 50-50, but you got to look at it kind of close to there. You got to look at it in the idea of, okay, we're going to start Yarrow Halak maybe like somewhere around like the 30 game mark, somewhere around 30, maybe 35 even. Because if you believe you're a playoff team, you want to keep Demko healthy and rested, because then you're going to need him to play every single game, and you don't want injuries and fatigue to come into play.
So after this Seattle game, that's going to be their last game on the road for quite a bit. They have a 7-game homestand after this. How many starts would you give Halak in that homestand? And I'll put you on the spot as well. Which starts would you give him?
I'd have to look again. I don't know the schedule off by heart.
They're playing the Wild, the Fly. I'll tell you the order right now. Wild, then the Flyers, then the Oilers, then the Rangers, then the Predators, then the Stars, and then the Ducks, and then they're back on the road.
Ooh, okay. I would say for now, homestand, I would like to see Halak maybe play 2. Like, I'd like to see him play 2. I'd like to see him get into I think the Predators game would be a good one for him. The Predators are not an incredibly strong team right now, but it's a good goaltending matchup because you're probably getting UC Saros that night, and I think that's a good measuring stick. And maybe against I'm trying to think back. Maybe the Rangers might be an interesting choice as well. One of those kinds of groups. Just again, I don't think it matters if you believe in your goaltenders enough. I don't think it matters too much who the team is. I think it's just a matter of making sure it's an even split, and you're not, say, going with like 6 straight of Demko, and then going to Halak for 1, and then going another 15 before you start him again, kind of thing, right? I think it's a matter of, find the breaks where you can. Honestly, consistency is usually key. So if you want to if let's say they wanted to start him 2 games out of the 7, then maybe you go something where it's like, okay, Demko starts the next 3, 1 for Halak. Start 3, 1 for Halak. Kind of go in that kind of style. Again, it depends on who your goaltenders are. It's completely different. Like, every goalie's different, obviously. So yeah, it's just a matter of communicating with your goaltenders, communicating with Ian Clark, their goaltending coach, and just figuring out what the best way to approach things is.
Yeah, I think monitoring the starts for Demko throughout the season is going to be a storyline to watch, because, like you said, you don't want to burn the guy out before the playoffs, because we know the goal for the Canucks this year is to make the playoffs. You don't want to burn that guy out before the playoffs start. So tomorrow night, we expect Thatcher Demko to get the start against the first ever Cascadia conflict, Seattle and Vancouver in Seattle. We're going to preview that game for you. Before we do that, though, we'll talk about our friends at BetOnline.ag. We're back, and better than ever, a new web interface for the start of the basketball and NHL season, and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, Lachlan, tomorrow night, the very first game in the Cascadia conflict, Seattle versus Vancouver. This should be a very, very fun game. Now, for Seattle, they had their first game against the other most recent expansion team, the Vegas Golden Knights, opening night in the NHL. They were down 3-0, battled back to make it 3-3 before losing that game. They managed to win the next game, their first ever victory in their history, 4-3 against the Nashville Predators. But since then, 3 straight losses, a 2-1 OT loss against the Blue Jackets, 6-1 loss to the hands of the Philadelphia Flyers, total beat down there. And then the last game on Thursday as well, 4-2 to the New Jersey Devils. So, I mean, they had a good start, 1-1, and then they're kind of like the Canucks, where they had a bit of a losing streak, but they haven't been able to bounce back like the Canucks have in their most recent contest. It's going to be a tough environment. This is the first ever home game for the Seattle Kraken. The fans are going to be jacked. They're going to be pumped. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. I'm sure there's going to be a cool opening ceremony to start the season, home season there, start the franchise home games there. It's going to be electric atmosphere. And for the Canucks perspective, I mean, we talked about this on yesterday's episode. The mood surrounding this team can completely change. If you get the win here, you have 2 on the bounce heading home, or I would qualify just a very good showing in the sense that you're not badly outshot by the other team and maybe a grind out a point. Depending on how this game goes, I think you have the win against Chicago. You come in here to Seattle and you maybe get a result, another 2 points. The mood completely changes around this team heading into that home opener against the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah. I will say it's a little funny. You mentioned how similar the Canucks and the Kraken are, at least so far, like this season and everything. I gotta say, it's a little sad that we're like, I know why we're allowed to do this right now, but imagine comparing a team that's been around for 50 plus years to a first year expansion franchise.
But all the analytics guys are saying Seattle's going to be a very good team this year. So this is a team.
I thought See, I heard a lot of them actually.
I saw the Athletic project them from being in the high 90s.
Interesting.
Like 96 points.
Now, I think partially that's due to the fact that the Pacific Division is not good.
It's also due to the fact that, let's be real, all these people were wrong about the Vegas Golden Knights. Everyone and their dog was wrong about the Vegas Golden Knights. And it's natural human instinct to overcompensate a bit the next time, a situation like this comes in and says, hey, these guys are going to be pretty good. Hey, still lots of season. Yeah. Still lots of season to be played. But a lot of people, a lot of the models were saying that Seattle's going to be a very good team, high 90s, all borderline playoff team, maybe a playoff team. So right in the wheelhouse of the Canucks.
I definitely think they're going to make the playoffs. But yeah, most of that is due to the fact that I don't think the division around them is very good. I think they're going to get Andre Palat back. They just did. They're going to get
Yanni Gourde. You're thinking Yanni Gourde.
Yanni Gourde. I knew one of them was from the Lightning. I knew they got one of those Lightning guys. And I believe Cal Yardcrow just came off of the COVID restriction list because they lost a couple guys to that too to start the year. This is a very big game in the history of the Vancouver Canucks. Like, we might not think about that right now. Because of the fact that, look, the Canucks are in the middle, have their own kind of problems going on right now, have their own issues going on that are taking, the spotlight away from say if both teams were at their best, what might have been one of a cool thing. But make no mistake, this is a very big game for the history of the team. They're finally getting an actual geographical rival because let's be honest here, Calgary does not count.
No, and San Jose doesn't count. Drive. It's a 12-hour drive to Calgary.
It's a 12-hour drive. It's a time zone jump away. And and in San Jose's case, it's an hour and a half flight to California to get there. And in all of those cases, the Canucks aren't even their main rival. Like, the Canucks are not the Sharks' main rival. That's the Kings or the Ducks, depending on who's doing better. Obviously, they're not Calgary's because that's Edmonton. This is the first time that they're actually getting a real geographical rivalry, one that will, and a rivalry that will actually stand the test of time as an actual battle between two cities that really have wanted that kind of atmosphere. They've got it a little bit with the Vancouver Whitecaps and the Seattle Sounders in the MLS.
Yeah, but the Seattle Sounders have kicked Vancouver's
exactly.
The entire time they've been in MLS. Like, it's been very one-sided.
Yeah, that's been a lopsided battle. And also, even then it's we're not talking about, soccer is obviously still very much the fifth, I should say Major League Soccer is very much the fifth league still, is very much a fifth league. The NHL is in the upper echelon, and you're never going to see a Vancouver NFL team. You're not going to see a Vancouver MLB team anytime soon. NBA, who knows? This is it. This is your moment. This is your chance to get a real Seattle Vancouver rivalry going in one of those big four leagues. And it's between a team that where Vancouver actually has history. They're coming in as the titan of the sport almost, in a way, just based on the fact that this is Seattle's the one with the new team here. And I think it's going to be very cool. It's going to be cool seeing them play at the old, Climate Pledge Arena now, which actually looks really cool. The former Key Arena. It's honestly, the fact that it's taken this long for Seattle to get an NHL franchise is shocking. Is shocking. It should have been there a long time ago. It just needed the people and the place to play. And yeah, it's going to be a very big game for the team. And one of those games where it's like, okay, like even if they had say gone 0-5 to start the year, if you were going to win a game, I want that to see them win this one more than maybe any game for the rest of the year. I want them to spoil the party so badly. They need, if you want to get this rivalry off on the right foot, you need to win the first one. You absolutely need to win the first game and hold that over them forever.
And it's a shame that we're doing it at a time where it's kind of hard to go down there to watch the game if you're a Canucks fan, right? Like you got to jump through a few hoops, and it's unfortunate timing. But hopefully we get to a point where we can go up and down from Seattle to Vancouver and watch this rivalry in person, because I think it'll be a fun spirited one. A couple things I'm interested to watch in this game: the goaltending matchup, Thatcher Demko versus Philip Grubauer, as I like to call him, Philip Poobauer, because he has these games. Lachlan, and I've had it from experience because I had him on my fantasy team last year. This is from experience. He did it already against the Flyers. He has these games. Well, he'll let in maybe 2-3 goals, completely deflate the team, and the game's over from there. And it worked in Colorado because there's a few times where he did that, and Colorado had enough firepower to come back and win this game. But he has a tendency, Philip Grubauer / Poobauer, that he will let in like 2-3 goals in the first period and completely deflate the team, and that's it. It's game over. I'm interested to see in the goaltending matchup in this one.
Yeah, this is very much a case where you're putting Demko in. You're going to have your number one, your best team. Like, again, it's very much the case of the Canucks want the best team possible on the ice. I expect to see like the best effort of the entire road trip out of this group, even more so than the game against Edmonton.
I would hope so. You got to be jacked for this type of game.
You should be coming in. Yeah, you should be coming in with more jack for any game, maybe even more than the home opener in Vancouver. Like, this is a game that you are going to want to be you want to come out of this so badly with the 2 points, because you know what this what's on the line as far as a new rival is concerned. And yeah, I think the goaltending battle is going to be very good. I think Grubauer is a very good goaltender. Like, yeah, he has his games, he has his inconsistencies. The Canucks, if they want to exploit that, they need to get pucks to the net pretty quick. They need to force him to make saves early. That's what a lot of these teams do. Like, if you let him relax and settle into the game, you're going to have a much harder time getting that kind of an opportunity off of him. You very much want to make him uncomfortable. You want to throw people and bodies to the net. You need to make sure that you're forcing rebounds. Because I was at the preseason game in Vancouver between them and the Kraken and the Canucks, and Grubauer stood in his head. He had a shutout. He got a shutout in that game, and he looked great the entire night. So you'd very much have to. And part of that was just due to the fact that early going, they didn't get the kind of quality. And by the time that they actually were starting to get them there, they weren't. He was locked in for the entire night. So you have to get there early. You have to control the pace of play.
Did you not like my Poobauer nickname for Grubauer?
I am anti any goal. I'm a goalie. I'm anti any sort of goalie. Any sort of goalie slander.
You didn't mind when I called Carter Hart,
unless it's Tim Thomas or Jonathan Quick. Then by all means, do whatever you want. I can care less.
You chuckled when I called Carter Hart Carter Fart.
I think because you know what? I've heard the Grubauer one before, but I haven't. I think the Hart one was new.
Okay.
That was a new one.
I come up with some new material then. One more thing I'm looking at from this game is if Jared McCann scores, because you know how Canucks Twitter works. Everyone's going to be relitigating the Jared McCann, Eric and Branson trade all over again, and nothing new will be said. Everyone's already dug in, and we're just if he scores against Canucks, especially in this game, it's going to be a long night, because there's going to be a lot of pointless arguments online. It's been 5 years, and how many different teams have given up on him? I get it's a bad
up
trade.
on him. He was good. Like the Penguin, he was one of the better players.
Yeah, but
he's been
cycled through so many teams at this point. How many teams you could, if you want to mention the Canucks, giving up on Jared McCann? Sure,
the Panthers and the Penguins.
But it's the Panthers and the Penguins. The Leafs traded for him and gave him up for nothing.
And that was a stupid choice. That was a bad choice.
Again, Kyle Dubas, biggest fraud in the NHL.
Look, and you know what's interesting is also last night I forget if it was a tweet or if somebody said it on the broadcast, but obviously the one goal the Hawks got last night was Alex DeBrincat, who Canucks would have been able to draft.
I heard this. Don't I know.
They could have McCann and DeBrincat right now.
Lachlan, you're just rehashing these things again. Nothing new has been said. That's such an old story.
I actually did not remember the part about DeBrincat. I did not know that was part of it. I did not remember that was part of the potential there. Long story short, like, look, the Canucks
Canucks Twitter is just so predictable at some points. I knew going into that game, if DeBrincat was going to score, someone's going to bring up, they could have had DeBrincat if they didn't trade that second round pick. And then Canucks Twitter is going to be so
true. It's not any less true, but it's not any less true. Like
I like to live my life, Lachlan, out of sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind. I don't want to be reminded of these things. Don't remind me.
Yeah,
good positive vibes only.
Jim Benning. Jim Benning also doesn't want to be reminded of his mistakes.
You know what? No, he probably thinks he made the right call there.
Oh, I'm sure. And then I'm sure he will, even if Jared McCann comes out and scores a hat trick, drops a hat trick on him like Tyler Toffoli did last year.
Hey, you know what? Jared McCann's getting a ton of opportunity in Seattle. First line center, first power play. Like he's being put in the situation, especially in an expansion team like Seattle, to succeed, right? And we'll see. I have him on my fantasy team. Another player I have on my fantasy team that we talked about today for that very reason, because he's going to get a lot of ice time, just like a lot of these Seattle Kraken players. But should be a fun game tomorrow night. I imagine there's going to be a pretty cool pregame ceremony. So puck drop may be a bit later than 7 p.m., but make sure you watch the game starting right at 7. Again, I have a feeling there's going to be a pretty cool pregame ceremony for the first ever game at home in Seattle Kraken history. But that has it for today's episode of Locked On Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you once again for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. Now make sure your second listen of the day is Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Host Scott Cullen leans on his decades of fantasy hockey insight and experience every day to help you be the expert of your fantasy league. It's free and available on all platforms. Once again, this is Locked On Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Nick Bondi. Follow me on Twitter at Nick Bondi. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have full video episodes on there for every episode. Lachlan, where can people find you and your work?
You can find me on Twitter at Lock of the Crease. You can find me on my writing at CanucksArmy.com. And you can find you can check out my other podcast, The Crease Cast, which I host with Cody Sievertson Mondays and Thursdays.
Awesome. All great stuff. Once again, Locked On Canucks. Thank you for listening.